The Beverly Hills Hotel's Crystal Ballroom glittered with the kind of opulence that only old Hollywood money could create, its Art Deco fixtures casting warm golden light across a gathering of some of America's most powerful entertainment industry executives, tech moguls, and venture capitalists. The annual Platinum Circle Gala was an exclusive fundraising event that raised millions for various charitable causes, while simultaneously serving as a networking opportunity for individuals whose combined wealth could fund small nations. At 75, Ozzy Osbourne moved through the elegant crowd with the careful grace of someone who had learned to navigate high society events despite feeling fundamentally out of place among the designer gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos. He was attending the gala at Sharon's insistence, representing their family's significant charitable contributions and supporting several causes that had become important to them over their decades of success in the entertainment industry. The event's guest list read like a Forbes billionaire ranking mixed with a Hollywood directory: streaming service executives, pharmaceutical heirs, real estate dynasties, and technology pioneers who had transformed digital concepts into global empires worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Most attendees treated Ozzy with the respectful curiosity typically reserved for cultural icons who had somehow maintained relevance across multiple generations of changing tastes and social evolution. If you're enjoying this story so far, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could show your support with a like. Your encouragement means the world to writers like me and helps stories like this reach more readers. Near the bar area, where guests were sampling rare vintage wines and discussing investment opportunities with the casual authority of people for whom money was merely a tool rather than a goal, stood Marcus Whitfield III, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune that had been built on patents for life-saving medications and had expanded into biotechnology, medical devices, and health insurance. At 42, Marcus had inherited not just tremendous wealth, but also the kind of entitled arrogance that sometimes accompanied generational privilege and insulation from ordinary human concerns. Marcus had built his personal brand around being a disruptor and innovator, frequently appearing on business television programs to share his theories about market efficiency, creative destruction, and the moral superiority of free market capitalism. His social media presence was carefully curated to project an image of intellectual sophistication combined with entrepreneurial boldness, though most of his actual business success had resulted from inherited assets rather than personal innovation or risk-taking. "I have to say," Marcus announced loudly enough for the surrounding group to hear, "some of these entertainment industry donations tonight seem rather quaint, small-scale vanity projects compared to the real systemic change that serious philanthropists can accomplish through strategic giving and policy influence." His comment was clearly intended to establish his position in the social hierarchy of the event, demonstrating superior understanding of effective altruism while subtly diminishing the contributions of others whose charitable approaches might be less sophisticated or impactful than his own carefully planned initiatives. Several people in his immediate vicinity nodded politely, though their expressions suggested more diplomatic courtesy than genuine agreement with his assessment. The entertainment industry executives present had collectively donated tens of millions of dollars to various causes over their careers, and many had seen firsthand how even modest financial contributions could create meaningful changes in individual lives and local communities. "Take that aging rocker over there," Marcus continued, gesturing discreetly toward Ozzy with his crystal wine glass. "I'm sure he's very sincere about his little charity work, but what lasting impact can someone like that really have? Entertainment is fundamentally escapist and trivial. It might provide momentary distraction, but it doesn't address root causes of social problems or create sustainable solutions to human suffering." The dismissive tone and obvious condescension in Marcus's voice began to attract attention from nearby conversations, as other guests realized that something unpleasant might be developing between two very different approaches to wealth, influence, and social responsibility. "Musicians and actors," Marcus elaborated, warming to his theme and apparently enjoying the audience his commentary was attracting. "They're essentially overpaid entertainers who mistake public attention for actual expertise. They perform for crowds, collect their fees, and then imagine that their celebrity status qualifies them to have meaningful opinions about complex economic and social issues." Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a respected oncologist who had been listening to Marcus's monologue, while trying to maintain professional composure, finally felt compelled to intervene. "I think you might be underestimating the impact that public figures can have on charitable causes and social awareness," she said diplomatically. "Celebrity endorsement and engagement often bring vital attention and resources to organizations that struggle to reach broader audiences." Marcus waved his hand dismissively, his wine-enhanced confidence making him bolder in his pronouncements. "That's exactly the kind of shallow thinking that prevents real progress. Emotional appeals and celebrity endorsements might generate some short-term donations, but they don't create sustainable systemic change. They're feel-good gestures that allow wealthy people to think they're making a difference without actually addressing the structural problems that create suffering in the first place." His voice was growing louder and more pontifical, drawing attention from conversations throughout the immediate area. Other guests were beginning to pause their own discussions to observe what was clearly becoming an uncomfortable social situation, though none seemed quite sure how or whether to intervene. "Someone like that Osbourne character," Marcus continued, apparently oblivious to the growing tension around him, "probably thinks that writing checks for drug rehabilitation programs makes him some kind of social reformer. But addiction is a complex medical and psychological issue that requires sophisticated intervention strategies, not rockstar sympathy and emotional manipulation." What Marcus didn't realize was that Ozzy had been approaching the bar area during his commentary and had heard the entire dismissive analysis of his character, intelligence, and charitable contributions. The rock legend stood quietly behind Marcus's shoulder, listening with the kind of focused attention he typically reserved for important business meetings or family conversations about serious matters. "Excuse me," Ozzy said quietly, his distinctive Birmingham accent cutting through Marcus's continuing monologue. "I couldn't help but overhear your analysis of my intellectual limitations and charitable ineffectiveness." Marcus turned around with the confident smile of someone who expected to easily dominate any conversation with what he assumed would be an intellectually inferior opponent. His expression shifted slightly when he realized he was face to face with the subject of his criticism, but his arrogance remained intact. "Oh, Mr. Osbourne," Marcus said with patronizing pleasantness, "I hope you don't mind some honest feedback about philanthropic effectiveness. I'm sure your intentions are admirable, but good intentions don't necessarily translate into meaningful results." "I see," Ozzy replied calmly. "And what would you consider meaningful results in charitable work?" Marcus launched into what was clearly a rehearsed explanation of his preferred approaches to philanthropy: large-scale institutional giving, policy advocacy, systemic intervention strategies, and measurement-based outcome assessment. His tone was professorial and condescending, as if he were explaining complex concepts to someone whose limited education and working-class background made sophisticated understanding unlikely. The difference, Marcus concluded, is between amateur emotional charity and professional strategic philanthropy, between feeling good about helping and actually creating lasting change that addresses root causes rather than just symptoms. Ozzy listened patiently to the entire lecture, nodding occasionally, as if genuinely interested in Marcus's perspective. When the explanation was complete, he paused thoughtfully before responding with questions that would demonstrate the depth of his own knowledge and experience. "That's fascinating," Ozzy said. "I'm curious about your work with addiction recovery programs. How many treatment facilities have you personally visited to understand the day-to-day challenges that patients and counselors face during the recovery process?" Marcus's confident expression flickered slightly. "Well, I don't typically involve myself in operational details. My focus is on strategic funding and policy advocacy that can create broader systemic improvements." "I understand," Ozzy continued. "And your experience with mental health crisis intervention. How many suicide prevention organizations have you worked with to develop their outreach programs and staff training protocols?" "Again, my involvement is primarily at the policy and funding level," Marcus replied, his tone becoming slightly defensive. "Direct service delivery isn't the most efficient use of my time and expertise." The small crowd that had gathered around their conversation was beginning to sense that this exchange was not developing the way Marcus had anticipated. Ozzy's questions were revealing gaps between theoretical philanthropy and practical understanding of the issues being addressed. "What about your background in addiction medicine?" Ozzy asked with genuine curiosity. "I assume your pharmaceutical experience includes research into addiction treatment and recovery support medications." Marcus was now visibly uncomfortable, realizing that his assumptions about Ozzy's knowledge and experience had been completely wrong. The pharmaceutical side of our business focuses on other therapeutic areas, he admitted reluctantly. Interesting, Ozzy mused, because over the past 20 years, I've visited over 200 addiction treatment facilities across 6 countries, not for publicity or photo opportunities, but to understand what actually works in helping people achieve lasting sobriety. I've worked with researchers at Johns Hopkins, UCLA, and Cambridge University on studies examining the relationship between music therapy and addiction recovery outcomes. The crowd around them had grown larger and completely silent, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented, a thorough intellectual dismantling delivered with calm authority rather than aggressive confrontation. I've also collaborated with the World Health Organization on developing guidelines for celebrity advocacy in mental health awareness campaigns, Ozzy continued, specifically focusing on how public figures can responsibly share their own recovery experiences without glamorizing addiction or oversimplifying complex medical conditions. Marcus's face was now visibly pale as he realized the magnitude of his miscalculation. The man he had dismissed as an aging entertainer with superficial charitable interests was revealing extensive expertise and serious academic involvement in exactly the areas Marcus had claimed to understand better. The suicide prevention programs that Sharon and I support, Ozzy went on, aren't just financial contributions. We've worked directly with crisis counselors to develop protocols for reaching young people who use music and entertainment as coping mechanisms during mental health crises. Our foundation has funded research that's contributed to evidence-based improvements in youth suicide prevention strategies. Dr. Chen, who had been listening with growing amazement, felt compelled to add her professional perspective. Mr. Osbourne's foundation has actually funded several research projects at major medical centers. Their approach combines financial support with direct involvement in program development and outcome assessment. In fact, Ozzy said, pulling out his phone, I was just reviewing some data from our most recent program evaluation before this event. Would you like to see the longitudinal recovery outcome statistics from the treatment facilities we've supported over the past 5 years? He showed Marcus a comprehensive report displaying success rates, cost-effectiveness analyses, and long-term follow-up data that demonstrated the practical impact of his charitable work. The statistics were impressive not just for their scope, but for their sophistication and the obvious care with which they had been compiled and analyzed. This is information we share with academic researchers and policymakers, Ozzy explained, because effective philanthropy requires understanding what works, what doesn't, and how to continuously improve approaches based on evidence rather than assumptions. Marcus was now completely speechless, his earlier confidence replaced by the dawning realization that he had not only misjudged Ozzy's knowledge and experience, but had done so in front of a room full of influential people who were now witnessing his humiliation. I think there might be a fundamental misunderstanding about the relationship between entertainment and social impact, Ozzy continued, his tone remaining conversational rather than hostile. Music, like other forms of art, doesn't just provide escapist distraction. It creates emotional connections that can motivate people to seek help, share their experiences, and support others who are struggling with similar challenges. He gestured toward the crowd that had gathered around their conversation. Several people in this room tonight have told me that songs I recorded during my own recovery helped them or their family members find the courage to enter treatment or ask for help with mental health issues. That's not trivial impact. That's life-saving intervention that happens because art can reach people in ways that policy papers and funding strategies sometimes can't. The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable, with everyone present understanding that they had witnessed not just an intellectual correction, but a lesson in humility and the dangers of making assumptions based on stereotypes and superficial judgments. I apologize, Marcus finally managed to say, his voice barely audible. I clearly misjudged your background and expertise. My comments were inappropriate and uninformed. No need to apologize for having different perspectives on philanthropic strategy, Ozzy replied graciously. But you might want to consider that effective charity work often requires both strategic thinking and direct experience with the people and communities you're trying to help. Sometimes the most important insights come from listening to those who have lived through the problems you're trying to solve. Dr. Chen stepped forward to ease the tension in the group. Perhaps this would be a good opportunity for both of you to discuss collaboration possibilities. Marcus, your pharmaceutical background and Ozzy's experience with addiction recovery programs could potentially create some interesting research partnerships. The suggestion allowed Marcus to recover some dignity while acknowledging Ozzy's expertise, and the conversation gradually shifted toward more constructive topics related to evidence-based philanthropy and the various ways that different types of knowledge and experience could complement each other in addressing complex social problems. But the damage to Marcus's reputation at the event was significant and lasting. Word of his arrogant dismissal of Ozzy and the subsequent demonstration of his own ignorance spread quickly through the social gathering, creating whispered conversations about the dangers of making assumptions about people based on their public personas or professional backgrounds. Several potential business partners who had been considering investments with Marcus's companies quietly reconsidered their decisions, questioning whether someone who could make such poor judgments about people and situations could be trusted with significant financial decisions. His social media presence, previously focused on projecting intellectual superiority, became a liability as people began sharing quotes from his comments at the gala, alongside information about Ozzy's actual charitable work and academic involvement. More importantly, the incident prompted broader conversations within philanthropic circles about the importance of combining financial resources with genuine understanding of the issues being addressed. Marcus's dismissive attitude toward entertainment industry charity work was revealed to be not just personally offensive, but professionally uninformed about the ways that celebrity involvement could amplify and enhance traditional philanthropic approaches. In the weeks following the gala, several major publications wrote about the encounter, using it as a starting point for discussions about effective altruism, the role of celebrity advocacy in social causes, and the importance of combining different types of expertise and experience in addressing complex humanitarian challenges. The most embarrassing part, Marcus confided to a close friend several days later, wasn't just being wrong about his background and accomplishments. It was realizing that my entire approach to evaluating people and their contributions was based on superficial assumptions and intellectual arrogance that prevented me from recognizing genuine expertise when I encountered it. The friend who had witnessed the encounter at the gala was direct in his response. "You made the classic mistake of confusing your wealth and education with wisdom and insight. Ozzy Osbourne has been dealing with addiction, mental health issues, and public advocacy for longer than you've been alive. His knowledge comes from lived experience combined with decades of serious engagement with experts and research." Marcus spent considerable time in the following months reflecting on the lessons from his encounter with Ozzy. He began visiting treatment facilities, meeting with addiction counselors, and learning about the day-to-day realities of recovery programs in ways that his previous strategic approach had never required. "I realized," he later told a business journalist, "that effective philanthropy requires humility and genuine curiosity about the people and communities you're trying to serve. My approach had been too focused on maintaining my own sense of intellectual superiority and not focused enough on actually understanding the problems I was claiming to solve." 6 months after the gala, Marcus reached out to Ozzy's foundation to explore collaboration possibilities, specifically around research into addiction treatment innovations that could combine pharmaceutical advances with the kinds of holistic support programs that Ozzy's work had shown to be effective. The partnership that developed was mutually beneficial, with Marcus's resources and pharmaceutical connections complementing Ozzy's experience and established relationships with treatment providers and recovery communities. But it was built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than the condescending attitude that had characterized Marcus's initial approach. Working with Ozzy taught me that the most valuable expertise often comes from people who have actually lived through the problems you're trying to solve, Marcus reflected in an interview about the partnership. Academic knowledge and financial resources are important tools, but they're most effective when they're guided by genuine understanding of human experience and real-world challenges. The story of their encounter became something of a cautionary tale within philanthropic circles, frequently cited as an example of why effective charitable work required combining resources with humility, theoretical knowledge with practical experience, and strategic thinking with genuine empathy for the people being served. For Ozzy, the incident reinforced his belief that the most meaningful contributions came from authentic engagement with causes rather than distant financial support. You can't help people effectively if you don't understand their experiences, he explained in a magazine interview. Whether it's addiction recovery, mental health support, or any other social issue, the solutions have to be developed with input from people who have actually faced those challenges. The encounter also highlighted broader issues about assumptions and stereotypes that prevented people from recognizing expertise and wisdom when it came from unexpected sources. Marcus's initial dismissal of Ozzy was based on cultural biases that associated intellectual sophistication with formal education and professional credentials rather than lived experience and practical knowledge. The most dangerous thing about wealth and privilege, Dr. Chen observed in her own reflection on the incident, is that they can insulate people from different perspectives and create false confidence about their understanding of complex issues. Marcus learned that lesson in a very public and embarrassing way. A year later, the research collaboration between Marcus's pharmaceutical resources and Ozzy's recovery program expertise had produced several innovative treatment approaches that were being tested at facilities across North America and Europe. The combination of cutting-edge medical research with practical implementation strategies developed through years of direct service had created solutions that neither party could have developed independently. This partnership works, Ozzy said in a joint interview with Marcus, because it's built on mutual respect for different types of knowledge and experience. Marcus brings scientific rigor and research capabilities, while our foundation contributes practical understanding of what actually works for people in recovery. Marcus nodded in agreement. I learned that effective philanthropy isn't about demonstrating intellectual superiority or maintaining social status. It's about combining whatever resources and expertise you have with humility and genuine commitment to understanding the people you're trying to help. The transformation in Marcus's approach extended beyond his work with Ozzy's foundation to influence his entire philanthropic strategy. He began spending time at the programs his family's foundation supported, meeting with beneficiaries and service providers to understand the practical challenges and successes that data alone couldn't capture. The gala incident was humiliating, Marcus admitted in a candid interview about his personal growth, but it was also educational in ways that no business school or consulting report could have provided. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from having your assumptions challenged by people who know more than you initially realized. The story became part of business school curricula, focused on leadership, decision-making, and the importance of intellectual humility in professional relationships. It demonstrated how quickly arrogance and assumptions could damage both personal reputation and business opportunities, while also showing how genuine learning and growth could emerge from even embarrassing mistakes. For both men, the encounter ultimately led to a meaningful partnership that combined their different strengths and perspectives in service of causes they both cared about. It proved that effective collaboration could emerge from the most unlikely conflicts, provided that all parties were willing to set aside ego and focus on shared goals rather than personal status. The incident also served as a reminder that wisdom and expertise could be found in unexpected places, that assumptions based on appearances or stereotypes often prevented people from recognizing valuable knowledge and experience, and that the most effective solutions to complex problems usually required combining different types of understanding and insight. Most importantly, it demonstrated that genuine philanthropy required not just financial resources, but humility, curiosity, and respect for the people and communities being served, qualities that couldn't be purchased or inherited, but had to be developed through authentic engagement with the world beyond privilege and wealth. Thank you for reading this powerful story about humility, respect, and the importance of looking beyond surface assumptions. If this tale of unexpected wisdom and personal growth resonated with you, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could show your support with a like. Your engagement helps stories like this reach more readers and reminds us all that true expertise can come from the most unexpected sources.